Well, we want to welcome all of our attendees to our first ever Premier Pre-Need Marketing Seminar in a series of a number of different training modules. This one is going to focus on family follow-up. We're going to discuss three separate options of probably many more that are available. Two of these that we're going to talk about today are fairly hands-off, require very little actual time and effort other than providing the list of names, and one's a little bit more hands-on. And we'll discuss all of these and how they work. Please, if you have any questions during this process, if you want to type in your questions, we will try to answer those at the end of this webinar. So let's start with our family follow-up. The first area that we want to talk about is a mail campaign, and this can be done via email or posted mail. As you can see from my screen on our Premier Pre-Need Marketing, we have what's called a newsletter program. I'm going to share that with you. This newsletter program is primarily focused on for a family follow-up program. It is done through a series of newsletters. They can be either done as an email campaign or on a mailed campaign. Two of our primary carriers, National Guardian Life as well as Great Western, both have this type of printed or emailed campaign for family follow-up. The one that we show here is a link to National Guardian Life's. Theirs is done through a series of 6 separate healings brochures, with a 7th then being done on the holidays. Great Western's program is done on a monthly basis as well. The first one is actually recommended to be given out at the time of need when you're meeting with the family for the at-need arrangement, at the conclusion of that, and then collecting the information to get them ready to receive the following months after that. They can be done for the informant or as many family members as you would like to do in that scenario. The cost on this type of program is relatively inexpensive. If they're emailed, they can be done at no charge to the family or to the funeral home. If they're mailed, there is an $18 charge for all 6 of the mailings with National Guardian Life. With regards to Great Western, again, if they're done through email, they're done at no charge to the family or the funeral home. If they're mailed, the only cost that's incurred is the postage. And with Great Western's program, they can be customized with the funeral home's logo on them as well. The second area of family follow-up that we want to talk about is a new company that we're working with and have partnered with recently called DomaniCare. This program is primarily a texting program, and I'm going to show you that as well. I'm going to open it up. DomaniCare starts with a process, as you can see here, of gathering names for a period of time. It's a sign-in sheet that the funeral home prepares once a week or once every 2 weeks with a list of names that get sent to DomaniCare. And DomaniCare's primary way of using their family follow-up program is through a series of text messages. And we'll talk a little bit about what that looks like here shortly. It includes also access to their over 30 videos done by a grief counselor. This video series can walk a family member or several family members through some help dealing with their grief. It's all part of the program for the funeral home. What this does is it allows for follow-up and um, contact with the family afterwards. I will share another one of their processes. Their texting schedule for this allows some contact fairly quickly after the funeral. So the initial follow-up is done 2 to 3 weeks after the service. As you can see here, there's an example of the text that goes out to the family, and it originates with a phone number that is customized to the funeral home, and it appears as to be coming from someone at the funeral home reaching out. So there's an initial follow-up, there is a Christmas or holiday message, there is a birthday message on the date of the deceased birthday, there's an anniversary message as well. It also, though, includes Google reviews and event invitation texts that can be customized to the funeral. If the family responds and are conversive via text messaging, it allows this Google review text to go out as well that can benefit the funeral home with gaining better reviews on Google. Just to share with you some of what that can be done, and DomaniCare's process through this, they actually title this Aftercare for the Digital Age, and the response rate that they've been receiving on this is what has been so great for the family. Because they do it via text messaging, notice text messaging boasts a 98% open rate and a 45% response rate. There are testimonials that can be shared with you as well as the funeral home. Let me get to the second page. It also then elicits Google responses from the people who do actively respond back to the funeral home and engage the funeral home in conversation. So it really helps both in the family follow-up process, as well as it can have a significant boost in the at-need arrangements based on the Google reviews. The cost on this varies on the size of the funeral home that's using it. Small firms, usually under 100 cases, can be negotiated. The standard price for this is about $300 a month, but on some of our smaller firms, we have seen prices of about $150 to $200 a month. We just need to work with DomaniCare to get this pricing taken care of for you. On a mid to larger size funeral home, that $300 a month will allow them to have full access. And again, it doesn't just have to be to the informant, it can be to as many family members as would like to take and participate in it. The third area that we want to talk about today is a little more of a hands-on type of family follow-up program. This is something that I personally have a lot of experience with. I spent 16 years working in a funeral home as a pre-need counselor. Much of that time focused on gathering business via this exact type of method, a family follow-up program. It is best if it's handled by a person who can focus on this, such as some kind of pre-need counselor or someone dedicated more to this time frame as well. The process, and we're going to walk through that process, allows the family to be able to be reached out to and taken care of. About 3 weeks to a month after the at-need funeral has occurred, a phone call is done to set up an appointment with the informant, and it can be done more of the family if deemed necessary. That phone call is very simple. It's hello, Mr. and Mrs. Smith. I'm reaching out. I work with our family follow-up department here at XYZ Funeral Home. We'd like to set up a time to get together with you and do a family follow-up visit. It'll take about 10 or 15 minutes. We just like to check on our service to the family and try to set that appointment. In one of the larger funeral homes that I worked with, I did most of those visits in home. At the last funeral home that I worked for, which was a much smaller town and smaller community, many of the people were happy to come back to the funeral home, and the family follow-up visit occurred right at the funeral home. Now, that visit, there were a number of things that I shared with the family. I had a folder that I had put together, and this sheet that you see here, my family follow-up sheet, is information that I would fill out at the time when I was setting the appointment, getting the information from the funeral records themselves, putting down that information when I was going to set the appointment. This checklist that I would go through, and again, this checklist can be customized to whoever uh, wants to use it. I'm happy to send it out. It's done in an Excel spreadsheet, as you can see here. It allows for changes to be made, but it gives you an idea of what I would walk through with the family. That primary visit was to check on the services that we as the funeral home had provided to them, to make sure that they were happy with the services that we had done. In that folder, I would have this form. I would have the statement of goods and services from the at-need arrangement that we had just performed. I would put together some grief information, sometimes care notes, or you could hand deliver one of those mailings that we talked about a little bit earlier. I would also have a very brief piece that would deal with pre-need. We included a gift to the family, and some funeral homes do this. Some have great success. The first funeral home that I worked with in this process, the gift to the family, and they had kind of gone all out. It was a large firm. They had taken some of the flowers from the funeral and they had freeze dried them. And then they took those flowers and put them in a dome and created a gift for the family in that fashion. Now that is expensive to do, and you don't have to go that far. The smaller firm that I worked for, they customized candles by inserting the deceased picture, date of birth, date of death, and those candles were handed out at the time of the family follow-up visit. I would also then ask families if they wanted more candles or more inserts, and it gave me an opportunity to provide to them um, at some revenue as well to the funeral home. The gift helps, it's not necessary. It does help you sometimes to get in to see a family, but if that's the only thing that's getting you into to see the family, then it may not be that visit is going to be and go anywhere in the future. We also created a certificate for the family that if they wish to take advantage of the pre-planning services that the funeral home offered, and we would talk about it very briefly at the end of my first visit, that we would offer to them a discount off the cost of their at-need arrangements for a period of 60 days. What this allowed people to do was to think about the benefits of pre-planning. And we would kind of talk at that uh, meeting there, the family follow-up meeting, if the funeral was pre-planned, how it worked for them. If it wasn't, I would often ask, did you find it difficult to go through all the decisions that had to be made at that time, to try to help them to see the benefit of doing it ahead of time. Then about 4 weeks after my visit, that first primary visit, I would contact them again because that certificate that I had left with them was good for a 60-day period. So 30 days later, I would call them again, ostensibly to see how they were doing, see if there was anything yet that they needed from the funeral home, because I was happy to deliver additional death certificates. You could take additional thank yous if they still needed them. Just that reach out, if they wanted more candles, just that reach out again to make sure that the family was getting taken care of. If there were anything that came up, notice there, if there were problems or issues during the funeral, I oftentimes would sit down with a number of the directors and we would talk about these to see how we could fix those. Either if we couldn't fix it for that family, make sure that it didn't occur on the next. That's the benefit of a family follow-up program, is it really does help you become better in this situation. So I would call back after about 4 weeks, see how they were doing, and then I would mention that certificate that I had left with them and say, have you given it a thought here on this? And my responses could be varied. Some would say, sure, I've thought about it. Andy, it's not quite the right time now. I'm still busy with things. And I'd say, great. Is it okay if I give you a call back in 2 or 3 months? Most of them would happily agree. Some would say, sure, let's set up a time. And others were just not interested. And so they would go on the back burner for future. The results were pretty good with regards to running this kind of family follow-up program to help boost your pre-need. 25% of the people that I worked with in this situation actually sat down with me and did pre-planning. And so it was very beneficial to the funeral home to help lock in their current clientele for the future. Because we know the market today, people are very transient. People aren't as brand loyal as they used to be. And having some kind of program in place that will help them to secure this will be very beneficial to the funeral home. And we're able to absolutely help provide that kind of scenario for the family. This information is available to anybody who wants it, as you saw earlier through our Premier Planning CRS program, which is available to all of our clients at no charge. Much of this information is found in here, and we're happy to share it with you. And we talked about cost on these 3 types of family follow-up programs. That mail-in campaign was relatively inexpensive, usually just the cost of postage, if not just a little bit more for some of the printing. On the DomaniCare, that was a little bit more expensive. And on the hands-on family follow-up, the cost is relatively inexpensive to the funeral home, but there is more time involved in that scenario. And so we have to be willing to be able to take on that time and help families. But doing a consistent family follow-up program is extremely beneficial. It really gives you a chance to lock in the families that you're currently working with to aid them through this difficult time. Many of them are seeking help, but they're too afraid to ask. And we know that there are avenues out there that we can help them by providing information to them. It's just getting it into their hands in a good way. And running an effective follow-up can help them do so. One of the questions that here was asked is, can we get copies of the aftercare form and certificate? Yes, I am happy to provide an aftercare form. I hate to say it, the certificate that we created, I just went to 123certificates.com and created my own certificate. If I have a copy of the blank form, I'm happy to send it out. I will have to take a look on my computer and see if I still have that. I did create it recently for one of the other funeral homes I worked with, so I may very well have that, and I'm willing to share that. If you would like to get in touch with me and send me an email, you can do so at andy.weninger, WENINGER, at Premier, S as in Sam, M as Mary, I as in Igloo.com. And I will be happy to forward any of this information on to you. Or you can ask your marketing director, your regional marketing director in pre-need for my contact information, and we can provide that and get this information to you. I think that takes care of all the questions that were asked. I appreciate the time that you've spent with us today, learning a little bit about family follow-up. Again, if you have any more specific questions, you can email them to me at the email that I provided. If you're looking for some scripts with regards to phone calls and or the family follow-up program, I'm happy to walk you through those as well, and have them for you so that we can share that. Again, thank you very much for your time. We appreciate it. We have a series of presentations that will be going forward for training. Look for the next one in 2 weeks, and feel free to register for that. Thank you, and at this time we will bring our presentation to a close.